everyone, and welcome to the C In COSS, where I talk to open source founders and builders about what really goes into the commercial part of running a commercial open source business. I'm your host, Ben Romich. Hey, right, welcome back everyone. A slightly unusual, maybe slightly surreal situation for me today as part of this new podcast series. Today I'm talking to Kyle, who's one of the originators, the originator of what became Flagsmith, and it's kind of surreal for me because we've been sat talking to each other about software for about 11 years, because we've been working together for 11 years, or something like that, I think. So Kyle, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is surreal. Like, I don't think we've been sort of like full throttle on developing the product, and we kind of haven't sat down and been too introspective about it. So this will be really fun. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's funny how the time can pass, and all of a sudden you're like 16 people, and like however many years have gone by. So maybe do you just want to give a bit of a background of like how we met 11 years ago, what we were doing up until sort of Flagsmith or Bullet Train at the time came about?
A long time ago now, like pretty much a year after I graduated university, I tried setting up a sort of software related business. That didn't work out, and my first sort of professional job was at Solid State Group. So back in 2013, I think it was. I think you interviewed me. And we've been working together on many different sort of projects as part of that agency since. And as part of that agency, we kind of wanted to create a product, get some recurring revenue, move a little bit away from the agency model, and we did that. A lot of luck, a lot of like really clever people, but we did that, and then here we are with like 15, 16 people and a growing business. So for those people who aren't aware, so Solid State Group is the company that I founded with another guy, Matt Evans, almost 25 years ago now, which is like crazy amount of time. And we originally started as a kind of hybrid content management system vendor and web agency, and that was back in the day before WordPress existed. Content management systems back then were really bad, really expensive, and so we designed and built one and used that as a way of winning clients, basically. And then over time, that agency, it was kind of interesting because we had a few different kind of stages of life as that agency. Originally doing kind of CMS stuff, and we did have a product that you could buy. Then doing more sort of startup work because we were in Shoreditch, and maybe like 12, 13 years ago, there was a ton of sort of startup cluster in Shoreditch, and we were doing a lot of work for building prototypes and MVPs for startups, which I guess is around about the time that you would have joined. And then I guess towards the later stage, we were doing some startup stuff, but then a lot more like sort of enterprise cloud transformation projects for really large companies, and getting them onto hyperscaler clouds, like moving applications, rebuilding applications, what now would be described as cloud native, I would think. But back then it was just moving stuff onto AWS mainly. What were the projects that you recall working on at Solid State back then before Bullet Train existed? Well, that's the thing. Like, working in an agency, I've got a lot of great things to say about working in an agency, but it's a lot. Like, I wouldn't want to sort of be spending all of my time working on an agency now, having done it for so many years. You get exposed to so many different projects, and it's quite intense. Like, every minute of your time is tracked. But on the positive side, you get to work on small startup projects in sort of like fitness, in sports, in like medical, a lot of different industries. And we got a lot of experience ranging from startups to sort of larger SMEs. And I think that experience
led us to being able to create a better, more well-rounded product. Because like we were like 30 customers in one from like the get-go.
Right.
Whereas I think a lot of people starting sort of like a SaaS product sort of have an image of what like a customer would be like who's selling to a wide range of people. You'd sort of be guessing a lot of it, but we were that, which I think gave us a lot of experience. Like to any sort of like young developers who maybe want to start entering business like further down the road, going into agency is a super intense like crash course to set you up for that, I think.
Yeah, 100%. There's actually it's like you get introduced to so many different like types of company, types of end customer, types of technology. You've got this like beautiful moment where it doesn't happen in every agency project, but it happens. Well, for us, it happened in a fair few of them where you literally got starting from scratch. So all of the tooling, frameworks, platform, infrastructure, everything you can just decide yourself, which is very, very rare. And I think we probably didn't relish that enough, because it's one of the things that changes massively when we did this shift was, going from an agency to working on a product full time is that radically different sort of engineering challenges that you're having to solve for. And in an agency, you get to do that quite, you might end up starting like 4 or 5 projects a year, right? And it is a great crash course in, and also like learning how to be efficient with your time, realizing when you're like going down a rabbit hole or going down a wrong path technically, you're, as you said, you're billing every minute or every hour of your time to that client, and this always in the back of your mind, isn't it? That being respectful of that, it's always there, and it really is. In a way, it's nice, but then definitely enjoyed the fact that when working on Flagsmith, that constant background sort of hum of like, is what you're doing the right thing, and is it efficient for your customer? That really did kind of ebb away, and you can spend more time like dedicating yourself to deeper technical things. But do you want to talk about, because you were the one that had the original idea for building a feature flag platform, but do you want to talk about how we'd sort of started to think about, because Solid State had this sort of like the potted story is, in an agency you're not always busy. Sometimes you can have years where everyone's basically flat out if the macro economy is really really growing, and then if there's a financial crisis or something of that nature, then you quite often have a lot of spare time. So at the agency we had a fair amount of spare time. We were trying to figure out how to use that efficiently, and then we started coming up with a framework for this, right?
Coming up with a framework on evaluating ideas, and a lot of it came from what we were just talking about. Velocity was super important. Your time was tracked constantly, and it was always in the back of your mind, as you say, what you spend your time on. So I spent a load of time making sort of like the front end code base super sort of quick to spin up, had components for everything, really making that process efficient.
Right.
But releasing those features was something that we hadn't really solved, and releasing was nasty. And in some cases where like we were working on a large medical product, we were releasing once every few months, and that was like a really stressful thing, because there was a load of code, there was often merge conflicts, and it was just a really complicated, stressful process. And I kind of hadn't solved for that, and I was like completely like really into sort of focusing on making the next project easier. So that's where the idea of that came from. And I think above all else, like I needed it, and I was looking around and there was nothing I could really use for different reasons. One of the big ones was Firebase. Firebase allowed you to do remote configuration, quite similar to feature flagging, in that you can sort of specify some configuration, and sort of that was remote. So that meant that you could change sort of behavior of your sort of applications remotely. And that was kind of part the way to what I thought we needed, but they only supported mobile applications. And there's this really nice sort of historical bit of the company that we can sort of relate to and refer to, in that I asked the question on GitHub to people at Firebase, like, why don't you support web applications? That we kind of like really want this sort of tool, but we have web and mobile applications that we want to service, so it isn't really sort of suitable for us. So that sort of led me to sort of looking into the features flag space a lot more. So it came from a real need, and the needs were a bit different from all of the different sort of customers that we had, and that helped me piece together like a really sort of strong roadmap of what I thought we wanted.
Yeah, I remember. Just to describe that medical product and project, it was a Bluetooth connected inhaler, wasn't it? Asthma inhaler that tracks, how often you'd used it throughout the day, and was syncing that data back to your mobile phone or to the app that we were building. And I don't know, for those of you, few people who are listening to this that have gone down that rabbit hole of low energy Bluetooth devices, how they talk to each other, incredibly complicated. We were building mobile apps, and I remember like releasing those in the App Store was just horrendously panic and anxiety inducing, because especially on Android, a lot of different Android devices, they have sort of like always have slightly different policies around how that Bluetooth LE stuff works. And we were like, Jesus, like this has got to be a better way. And quite often, we were like delaying releases for months and months and months, because someone on the test team had found some problem in, my inhaler never synced to, horrendously painful problem, and kind of like be hard really to conjure up a more prime target for feature flagging, wouldn't it? So we went through a process of having anyone in the company who was working in the agency who had an idea for a side project could put together or fill in a proposal document which answered some questions of, who's the target customer, what's the product, why would we be good at building this? And I'm just looking, we've still got, some of these were written in 2016. We've still got, I think we had about 20 different ideas, and they ranged from, which we built some of these as well, didn't we? They ranged from a battle royale, top-down 2D mobile game to a kind of a Notion type competitor, wiki type product. We had a mobile app that was trying to help people split bills in restaurants, all sorts of different stuff. And then one of those was Bullet Train, which was the proposal that you filled out, right?
Yeah, and actually, when I first joined in 2013, I think it was, we were working on what was very much like Slack at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And it was really sort of inspirational coming from a sort of like a business background, that the fact that we could sort of do this sort of thing. I mean, like I was sort of sitting down thinking at the time, there is one key difference, I think, with Flagsmith and some of those ideas, in that with like a Notion sort of application, Slack application, you could be one of the target customers for those products.
Right.
But you're servicing like a really wide range.
Massively, yeah, like basically almost any company in the world, right?
Yeah, and coming up with all of the use cases for those different sort of areas in sort of business is really difficult, impossible with our sort of team. Whereas with Flagsmith, we were really the core customer. We were a lot of customers in one. We as an agency, we were a startup, we were an SME, we were all of those things at once because we were delivering products to those people. So I wanted, and we were a bunch of really like talented engineers, so we needed to use that to our strengths. So that's why I wanted to build a developer tool, one, to help us out, and secondly, to be the first customer before releasing it to sort of
Right.
like wider.
Yeah.
Because I think I kind of saw when we were servicing some startups specifically, they kind of have this behavior of coming up with excuses for the product in that they would sort of like say, like almost like blaming a customer to say like, they're not understanding the product right. Whereas if you're multiple customers in one, the proof is in the pudding. Can you use your own application or not?
Right.
So,
And actually, I'm looking at the template, the proposal document that you put together, and one of the questions was, is this a problem you know exists or a problem you hope exists? If you know, how do you know? Be honest. And the answer was, because I'm the target audience.
this
right?
was the easiest question ever. It was just so easy. Like, I had such a strong idea. I didn't even know the concept of feature flagging. I didn't know really that existed kind of in its infancy. It was definitely a lot different to what it is now. I didn't know that existed, but the ideas of what I wanted fell completely into what that sort of was, not just at the time, but what it is now. So like the roadmap, we've developed a lot of other stuff, but a lot of the things sort of stand up to today, like in terms of what we needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other interesting thing is the core product still looks, almost identical to what that MVP that we built, 7 years ago. I mean, another question, does solid state have any unfair advantages in the market? And it's like, yes, like
Definitely.
Like we're like we're the target customer. And yeah, like you said, like there's so many things that fall off that. I mean, maybe, probably one of the reasons why there's so many, issue tracking projects that have ever existed and things like that, because, it's almost like this kind of, almost like you're not a seasoned engineer unless you've tried to build your own issue tracker, right? Like, So yeah, like being our own target customer, being able to dog food our own product, not having to rely on, this enormous loss of information when, you could go and if it was for a different sector, sure, you could go and, if you could go and interview 50 or 20 software engineers and ask them what their problems are around releasing products and doing deployments and things like that. But there's still a massive amount of information loss by, just interviewing someone for half an hour compared to, actually having lived it for 7 years, right?
It's incomparable. Like, yeah, and I think our experience was kind of like an extreme version of, you get a lot of like big tech companies release their own internal products. Like React Native is a really good example of that,
right?
From Facebook. But the difference between that happening and what we did is they had mainly their own internal sort of company use cases, whereas we had such a wider range of like things that we were trying to achieve. And it's almost perfectly sort of shown by what we've ended up sort of developing on top of our core product. So we knew how to really service from startup to sort of larger SMEs, but what we didn't have experience with was serving a lot of data sensitive large organizations that we later came to service like quite a lot. And that became like, we didn't really anticipate the features for that in the original roadmap.
Right.
And that took that interviewing and doing a lot of that sort of customer development. And that wasn't what came with the initial idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
we've kind of gone through both. Yeah.
That's definitely, I remember we did, it's interesting. So we did put a lot of thought into what the product was, how engineers would use it. Yeah. Very much very much answering the questions of the people that were going to use the project and use the product day to day. But one of the things that we were really quite blind on is there's quite often for large organizations, almost always the person buying the product at the start isn't the person using it day to day. And what they're buying and what you're selling to them can be and the things that they value can be radically different to what the engineers that are going to be using the product day to day care about.
Yeah.
We didn't really put much thought into, the combination of open source, self-hostable, easy to deploy, having a very, very simple deployment stack. We were completely naive to the fact that, yes, like you mentioned, that is bullseye for data sensitive organizations who can't buy SaaS. And I think this is partly due to our experience of we would never have considered, being a small company, that there were people out there that legally, they just weren't allowed to buy a SaaS product and have their customer data, exfiltrated out of their business on purpose. And so that was one of the things that I think part of what you mentioned luck as well. Like there was definitely up until that point, there wasn't that much luck involved in it. It was like years and years and years in decade of experience trying to build products, trying to deploy products. But then there was definitely a point of luck where we kind of suddenly started to realize that we had a SaaS product that you could buy, and the growth of that was very, very slow. But then all of a sudden, in the space of about 6 months, we started to get a steady stream of inbound sales requests from massive organizations who all had a common shape, which was that they were data sensitive for whatever reason, right? It might be financial services or healthcare or insurance or what have you. So there was definitely luck on that side, but I think it was fairly obvious for us, wasn't it? I remember realizing that we had to pick that up, and that was like this potential other growth factor for the company.
Yeah, you're never going to know 100% what your product's going to look like in 8 years time, but I'd say we had 2/3 of it locked down, and I'm really glad that we went through that sort of experience of not knowing and sort of going through and developing and realizing just extra value to the product that we just wouldn't have even thought of. I think another thing as well is some of the scale of these organizations and the money saved is something that blew my mind. The idea that an engineering team with feature flags can sort of release code and not need to sit in a load of these release meetings where everyone has to orchestrate sort of this release of code for the QAs and the product owners to be able to sort of do those parts, and empowering both sides to be able to work independently just saves hundreds and hundreds of hours for these organizations. And there's just no way with our experience in the sort of agency that we'd have been able to anticipate that. But it's really cool to see that, see them so excited about what that means for them. I just wouldn't have imagined that would have happened.
And so what do you think, what's your proudest moment in the company's history so far, do you think?
That's a really good question, because I thought about this recently and it's changed.
Right.
And initially it was being in the sales call, doing a demo to sort of some of the organizations that you'd look up to, some which we can't like say like in the sort of tech industry that you think like, wow, those are the people that you dream of sort of talking to and them liking your product. So that was a huge amount of recognition from the start of thinking of this silly idea to some of the largest companies like liking your product. That was really cool. Now it's changed a lot. So like in February, we all flew out to Barcelona, and we've hired people all over the world, and we all got to meet up in Barcelona. And there was this moment at it was like 2:30 a.m. Everyone was all still up. Some of them have been working for the company for like a few years at that point. They'd gained sort of closer sort of connections to each other. Everyone was up, like enjoying the sort of experience, talking to each other. And all of that came from a silly idea where people's careers are sort of like blossoming. They're really into sort of working on your product. And that is like, to me, a higher level of sort of like what we've sort of done and achieved. So I think that's the proudest thing for me now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. It's interesting actually because it does change quite often. I remember when our SaaS API tripped over 1 billion calls a month, or for the last 30 days. That was like, I never thought I'd be working on a product. And if you'd have said to when we were like, oh yeah, actually this feature flag has got really good legs in terms of an idea. If you'd have said to me, how much time was it? Like 4 years later, you'd be running like 1 billion calls a month through your infrastructure. Yeah, I wouldn't have believed that. So I have been proud of that. But yeah, definitely with a remote company, getting people together from all over the world, from India and South America and Europe, and that mix of cultures and having different people with different backgrounds and different ideas and stuff getting together through like shared interest in software and open source and stuff, like that's been really, really, really fun. Just so one question for you, well, we can both answer. If someone's building an open source project and just received an email from their first potential customer, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
Okay, so I can definitely relate this back to when it happened to us. And the first thing I would say is prepare for that up front. Be optimistic about your own product. Prepare for it. As engineers, we're, I guess, sort of stereotypically not good at sort of dealing with that situation in terms of like pricing as high as it should be for sort of larger organizations. I remember when we got our first contact out and it was after hours and we were at the pub and we were just like, oh, we don't know what to do. So prepare for it, sort of have an answer ready. If you're not sure on how to sort of like price a product, get in touch with someone who has experience with that.
Yeah.
So you set yourself up for sort of success for that and sort of respond back quickly to that. Don't leave it running, even if it's a holding message. Sort of respond back, show that you're active and you're sort of engaged. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, well, mine is kind of simple. So it's interesting because I remember that moment.
Yeah,
and they were asking on our web chat, which was one of the other ideas that we had before we started using Crisp. But shout out to Crisp, which is an amazing product. We built our own web chat, and so we were using that. So it's kind of weird. These two product ideas, and one of them was the one that was generating this inbound lead. And the question was, how much does it cost for an enterprise license of your platform, right? And we were so unprepared for that question that we thought that the answer, the best, like, what's the best answer in terms of what's the number that we should give them right now? But the actual right answer wasn't to give them a number at that point, right? Yeah. That's like, I didn't know about that. And if you're in enterprise sales, and if you're buying stuff on the enterprise side, I'm sorry that's the answer, but that is the right answer, right? Like, and I've learned that now, having spoken to people who've got way more experience than me in terms of doing that. But definitely for me, I think well, I'm going to be a bit of a cheat on the question here, because the advice I'd give you if you've got one sort of inquiry come in is to wait, because what you're really looking for is a pattern. And for us, it was that signal of the types of companies that were contacting us was so obvious. You really didn't need to be this like sales genius to figure out what that pattern was and who it turns out our target customer actually was, compared to the assumption we've made. I wouldn't say it's an incorrect assumption, because the revenue split of the business now is probably 70-30 to enterprise customers to on-premise enterprise customers to SaaS customers, but definitely waiting for a signal and a pattern and something, because what you're looking for is repeatability, right? If you don't have repeatability, then you're just going to be spinning your wheels. In the worst case, that first email, that might not have been a data sensitive company, right? That might have been someone completely different. And if we'd have gone, oh, look, we've got our first inbound lead, we need to figure this out. Maybe we should start building a ton of stuff in that direction, but just by chance, unluckily for you, that first lead's that isn't your target customer. You don't know that at the time, and you're like excited about it, and that's completely understandable. But wait until you've got, a handful of bits of data that you can then try and figure out, and it might be that there's no pattern, right? And then you're going to have to go, right, maybe we're selling to like a generalist population, like maybe like Slack art, right? Where they've got this like huge, like their target market is kind of everybody. But that's a signal in itself. So I think for me, looking for a pattern in there is really important. Okay. And so final question, what's the most important thing to you in terms of building the company? Like, what's the kind of one North Star thing that, you've got in your mind?
Well, like, feature flags are not saving lives, right? So I think the main thing is like people like your product. I think sort of nurturing the open source community is definitely a huge thing for me. I think I get less and less shocked now by big companies coming to us doing demos, right. Big companies. But the one thing that remains that really means a lot to me is when people just are submitting pull requests to your product, care enough to sort of take time out of their day to contribute. Because we've had some like really meaningful sort of like value added stuff, like features, even like bug fixes and documentation. Like, I just love to see that grow. So I think the company itself is doing really well, but like I want to see sort of like more in that direction more than anything. What about yourself?
I think for me, making sure that everyone that works at the company is like really just excited about it and enthused by it. One of the things that maybe probably deserves another episode of this series is the challenges around having a remote business, because that was kind of a COVID effect. Was we were having to build a company where you couldn't travel, and we knew we needed people around the world to support global customer base and things like that. That remote aspect of the business has been, I wouldn't say challenging is the right word, but it's been really made me real. It's been very, very different to running a business based in London, where everyone's coming into the office every day, and everyone knows each other face to face, and being able to solve the problem of making sure that everyone's happy, excited, enthused with the business when, for 99% of the year, you're like, the closest you can get to each other is a Google Meet or whatever is really tough. So I think that's like making sure that we're like solving that problem, I think is really, really important. And then kind of a lot of things flow off from that after you've solved that. But that's been really, really challenging. And there's like, we're still constantly learning about the problems that, just my favorite example is we hired a guy in Ecuador, and they didn't have a functioning postal service at the time. And they didn't have a functioning delivery service at the time.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out how to ship a MacBook to them. And, it's like, wow, wasn't aware that this was going to be my day today. So, yeah. All right. Okay. Well, Carl, thanks for your time. Have you got any final thoughts?
No, just that it's been great to sit down and talk about this, think about sort of like our journey, because it's been sort of so fast paced. So it's nice to sit down for around an hour and talk about it. So yeah, thank you.
All right. I think I might speak to the other solid state guys, and I think it might be time to publish those. All those proposals just to give people an idea of like what else we were thinking about at the time, because that's one of those kind of sliding door moments of like, I think there were a couple of other projects that weren't that far behind feature flagging as an idea that we thought had legs. So yeah, maybe that's a nice sort of historical document. But yeah, Carl, thanks for your time. It was great to chat.
All right, brilliant, thanks.